Hello, my name is Fred Bronson, and for the last couple of years, it's been my great privilege to work with a gentleman who has had the most fascinating life, a bit dangerous, a bit exciting, and always interesting. And today I want you to meet David Junk. David, welcome.
Thank you, Fred.
I got a lot of questions for you today.
Fantastic.
All right.
Looking forward to it.
We have written a book called Rockin the Kremlin, and we're going to focus on that today.
Excellent.
Where I want to start is, you grew up as a Cold War kid on a farm in Ohio. How did you end up running a major record label in Russia?
Interesting question. So how does a kid go from a farm to a record label in Russia? Well, I was a Cold War kid growing up in Ronald Reagan's America. I was always afraid of Soviet ICBMs being launched at us because we lived near an Air Force base, a very important Air Force base near Dayton, Ohio, called Wright-Patterson. And we always knew that that would be a first target strike by the Russians if there ever was a nuclear war. So I lived under that threat growing up as a kid. Mutually assured destruction was a way of life. And we just were practicing going to the fallout shelter all the time, learning how to protect yourself from radiation. Of course, it was all nonsense. There's no surviving a nuclear war. But we were led into that false sense of security. I continued having great fears about the Russians even into college. One of my college classmates was actually killed by the Russians. She was in that passenger jet KAL-007 that was shot down over the Sea of Japan by a Soviet MiG in 1983. And we were in the same class together, and it was a great tragedy that really hit close to home for me. So between that and just generally being worried about a Russian first strike, I'm the last person you would expect to move to Russia and run a record label. I realized that this probably is the most exciting place in the world, Eastern Europe, after the fall of communism. So I decided to go back to America and learn business, because I needed a business degree to come back to this part of the world and work and help them transition from communism to capitalism. But I also needed to learn Russian. Everybody in Eastern Europe spoke Russian because they had to. They were forced to learn it in schools. The Soviet Union and Eastern Bloc was very strict about that. So Russian is a language that was useful, like English is in the business world. Russian would be useful in the Eastern European business world. So I studied Russian and got my business degree at San Francisco State and made my way back to Russia, where I answered a help wanted ad for a company called Polygram. And they were advertising in the Moscow Times. They were looking for a financial controller who spoke English. And I speak English, and I knew accounting. So I applied and immediately got hired to be the financial director for Polygram's office in Moscow. And they were the very first record company to open an office in Moscow. So that was exciting. That gave me the opportunity to work with the Cranberries and U2 and Bon Jovi and Bob Marley is on the roster, and Pavarotti. So what a great introduction to the international music business. But eventually, Polygram was merged with Universal Music. Universal bought Polygram, put the two companies together, and when that happened, I was offered the chance to be the CEO of the new Universal Music office in Russia. So I became the very first American to run a record label in the former Soviet Union. And that's how a farm boy, not the most usual path, but that's the path I took to make it into the music business.
Quite a unique journey. I can't imagine anybody else who's done exactly what you did to get from a farm in Ohio to running a high-powered record label in Moscow.